One thing we're trying to start early on this year is culling out and repairing our bee pallets. I always say every year we're going to do it, and we'll usually do like a stack or something right before California and fix them up. But honestly, we always get so tied up and things get so wild and crazy around California that we don't have time to fix them. So we've already started doing this. I've got a few here that are already repaired. Some of them don't have that many issues. Sometimes they're just missing a W clip, they're missing a single rim. Not a big deal. We're also going to make sure we put drain holes in all of them as well. But some of them, as you can see, are just absolute trash. A lot of these, like this, we're just going to take the clips off. We'll use, one of the 2x4s underneath, a rim, whatever. And if we can't salvage anything from it, or we take what we can, burn pile, gone. A lot of this stuff is not worth the expense of transporting to Tennessee. Like one like that, that's just completely rotting, falling apart. That's not worth driving 8 hours up there. So we'll kind of break it whatever we can down and salvage what we can, fix what we can. These are all extra pallets. Obviously, we've got bees on all the pallets out in the field are in good shape, but I always like to have some extra fresh, clean ones ready because we're going to swap all the hives over to fresh, clean pallets right before we send them to almonds and make sure there's no ants or anything on them. So it's always good to have a surplus amount of pallets. I would love to have, 100 additional extra pallets. That would be a semi load, so we can swap over a semi. That'll free up a semi load of pallets. Then we can grab the next semi and so on and so forth. Of course, in a perfect world, I would just have all the pallets. Wouldn't have to bother with this. I would have enough just to swap everything over to send. But in reality, we always have to clean. We always have to repair, salvage, stretch everything we can. But a lot of this stuff is absolute junk. And I'm going to be happy to see it gone. A lot of this crap is either stuff I bought off, other beekeepers. Some of this stuff's junk that my old jobs threw away. It's been sitting in the yard here for years, just rotting. So that's one good thing. I'm glad for the move. It's forcing us to get through all this extra crap that's just been sitting in my yard for, it feels like forever. It's going to be a long process, but we'll just kind of chip away at it as we have a free day. We have a free time. But anything that's not good, by the time we move, it's gone. So we have a bunch of stuff, not just the pallets. I got boxes out here and stuff I need to go through. And most of them are just absolute trash. I don't know. I'm bad about hoarding bee equipment, I guess. We're always trying to make it stretch. Oh, if I can get one more year out of this box, one more year out of this pallet, I can put that money elsewhere. But now I'm like, you know what? Let's just cut it. We may end up not being able to run as many colonies next year. I don't know if we take a little bit of an equipment hit, but at least the equipment we have will be good. I'm just really tired of running with junk this year. This is what I've started doing here just recently. When I come back from feeding and I've got that last, whatever it is, 10 gallons or so in the tote that the pump just won't pull, I've just started pulling one of these pools up nearby, and I've just opened it and let it fill up. And usually I can get almost a full pool out of it every time, which I guess really is closer to 20 gallons is what these pools will hold without really overflowing. I put one on both sides, so I've started carrying 2 totes with me now, just so I can feed a little extra every day. So I'll have one pool on each side, drain it so I can open feed the hives out here at the farm, which is really nice. And I don't have to worry about that syrup sitting in there and fermenting, especially since I'm doing a 1-to-2 syrup now. This stuff will ferment really quickly, so better to go ahead and get it out and give it to the bees. All right, back at the farm. Gonna run through these singles again. We finished rebuilding all of the dead out hives in the outside colonies this week. It's done. No empty spots anywhere in the entire apiary besides right around here. I don't really care. I'm not gonna be able to rebuild all of these. At this point, I just need to go through them, make sure they're still queen right, check for any mites, disease, whatever. Maybe I've still got a few little medium foundation supers there. Actually, I'm almost out. That's all I've got left, I think, in the whole business. So I'll throw those on if I can find any, that are around 8-frame populations or so. I kind of want to get a feel to see if there's even a snowball's chance in heck that these things could make it to California. I think if I keep a thin open feeder on them, which I am, so I'm keeping a 1-to-2 on them, anything that's probably a solid, healthy 5-frame and has comb, I think I can get them up to an 8-frame by the time we ship them out. Anything less than 5, I doubt it. Not without boosting, and most of these hives can't give anything. So I just kind of want to get an idea. Not really grading, just want to get a feel for the yard. It has been increasing a little bit. You know, I've had that open feeder on them for a long time now, but I don't know. It might be a little bit of a long shot, but there's a couple hundred hives here. And again, worst case scenario, I'll just combine these suckers. So I can still end up with 100 double deeps if I want, just by merging. So that's kind of what in my mind, I'm sort of guaranteeing. But I just need to go through. There were a few that had beetles last time I ran through these. I did put beetle traps with roach jailbait poison in those, but it was really just a small handful. The beetles do seem like they've been tamped down pretty well. I'm burning equipment as I'm out here doing this. The state bee inspectors came out to my homestead yard, I don't know, a couple days ago, I guess. And they were doing a national survey, I think, for the USDA. And they basically tested the hives for, you know, everything. They mite wash, I think, look for the new, what is the new mite called, Tropholapis or something like that. And, you know, I think they're going to test for nosema. They said basically everything they can test for, they're going to test. So they sent it off to the lab. I'm sure it's the USDA, so I'll get the results back in a couple decades, especially with the shutdown as well. So now probably 3 decades. But hey, it was a free sampling, which I'm down for that. And not only was my bee inspector, Jimmy Davis, there, but the neighboring bee inspector, Jeff Pippin, came too. And I don't get to talk to Jeff much, but I always do. And I always like talking to him because Jeff is, I don't know, he's very he loves the science behind the bees. He knows a lot of studies. He really specializes in like nosema. He's got a microscope. You know, he'll grind up the bees and check for nosema spores, you know, on his own, which is pretty cool. So I got to pick his brain a lot about nosema. I also want to buy a microscope. They're not even that expensive. You can get one for a couple $100. I think you only need a 400 times magnification. So that's not a very high powered microscope. But with the move coming and everything, I'm like, yeah, let me just wait till next year. I mean, I've never really been worried about nosema, but Jeff was really telling me, you know, and if you watch my spring videos, you know, Jimmy was also telling me that there has been some nosema spreading down south a bit. They've been detecting more and more spores, both nosema apis and nosema ceranae. You know, there's 2 different types. So they recommended that we treat with Fumidil B. The active ingredient, I believe, is fumagillin. It's an antibiotic. I did treat, I think, like the hive and a half this spring when we had them all stationed out there for California. And, you know, I don't know if it was good or not. You know, I have no idea. We didn't send any off to the lab until just now. So I've just never thought of it really being a problem. But Jeff said, yeah, it's not really a cold weather. It's more prevalent in colder states, but it doesn't mean it's not prevalent in the southern states. So they really pushed me to treat this fall too, because you're supposed to treat once in the fall. I mean, once in the spring prior to honey flow. I think 4 weeks prior to making honey. So the antibiotic has run its course through the hive, doesn't get in your honey. And then treat again in the fall, especially now when there's a lot of pollen and stuff going on. The bees are growing. So of course that also means disease grows with the bees. So I did, I have a little bottle left over from this spring. So I'm trying a few different methods. Jeff's recommended method of applying the Fumidil, and I agree with him, it probably is the best, is to take a little squirt bottle and mix a thin syrup with it and just pop a lid on the hive and give them a couple shots, and the bees will clean it up and it's fine. That's what we did this spring. It was super easy. I mean, sometimes you don't mix it well, you know, it'll kind of clog up the squirt bottle. Sometimes that's a little annoying, but if you mix it really, really well, it will work just fine. So his method is probably right. I'm trying 2 other methods. Is the open feeder up there at the truck that I've got, that I'm sort of draining the syrup out of those totes with. I did mix a little bit of the Fumidil in that tote. So I'm open feeding the hives here medicated syrup. So it's a 1 to 2 with Fumidil. That's probably the single worst way to apply Fumidil to a bee yard, because of course the stronger colonies with more foragers are going to take more syrup, so they're more likely to OD on it, and the weaker colonies with less foragers are not going to get as much as they probably need. And fumagillin is also highly volatile. Like when it comes to direct sunlight, UV rays deactivate the antibiotic incredibly rapidly. It breaks down in high temperatures. I think around 120 degrees it starts to like fall apart. So that's not great when I have a plastic pool sitting in full sun out here. But as you know, I'm slam out of buckets, so I don't really have much of an option for direct feeding here, although I probably will just give them all a little shot with the squirt bottle. I didn't have enough medication to medicate very much. I just had like a tiny amount, so I did order 2 more bottles, the 454 gram bottles of Fumidil B. 2 of those bottles should be enough for me to treat all 1,600 colonies we have a full dose, because you need about, I think, like 25 milligrams of Fumidil B per colony, if I remember correctly. So I'm going to try Jeff's method, and I'm also going to open feed the hives here with this method, and I'm also trying to direct feed. So I'm mixing the Fumidil in the syrup tote, so it works really well, blending that together with the syrup pump, and I'm filling the 2-gallon buckets in the outside yards. I think I did it with 1 or 2 yards I'm testing it on. Now, because Fumidil breaks down at 120 degrees, those new plastic buckets are going to get freaking hot. And we're still easily in the 80 degrees here. It can jump up to 90 still, even in this weather, although it is starting to cool down a little bit. I took an infrared thermometer out with me the other day when I was doing that little test yard with the Fumidil, and I measured the temperature of the black bucket before I added syrup, and it was like 95 degrees on the outside, so pretty freaking hot. And it was a cloudy, overcast day too. It was not that hot. Having the black lids doesn't help. So I added the syrup to the bucket, and it dropped about 10 degrees, so it got to about 85. So if it starts to deactivate around 120, and it may start deactivating a little earlier than that as well, kind of pushing it, honestly, with black buckets. But, you know, I'm going to try it too. The problem is there's no way for me to test it. I'm not going to go send off random samples to the lab right now. We got too much going on. I'm not buying a microscope, so fortunately I'll have absolutely zero idea if this works whatsoever, but I'm going to do it anyways. What the heck? And, you know, if the lab results from the USDA study come back and shows that we have high levels of nosema, I may rethink that. Maybe I will buy the microscope, but we did have our 1 yard sampled last year, and our nosema count was like super low. Like, it was detectable, but it was far below the national average, even in this area. So I don't know. I know one symptom Jeff was telling me of a nosema infection is that the bees become very lethargic, and even if you're feeding them directly or you have an open feeder like this, it will slow down their growth. They're not able to, I think, to process the syrup or the nectar or whatever you're giving them, and the foragers are just not going to go out and collect like in an open feeder like this. And you know, I have fed the crap out of these hives. Like, I don't know what they've even had now, 4 gallons or something for these little singles. They ought to be plugged out. They have not expanded very much. And I also was researching more on nosema because I'm not an expert on it. That's not something I really bother with here. One symptom of nosema infection is high queen supersedure rates. If you remember earlier this season when we had all these were all our mating nukes, right, out here. And when we transferred them from those 5-frame plastic boxes into the 10-frame deeps, the vast majority of the queens, like it was a huge amount, superseded. And my little hypothesis back then was that by me taking the hives in that compressed state in that small box and then dropping them into a larger box, maybe made the bees not detect the queen pheromone or the young larval pheromone as strongly. So maybe they thought their queens were bad. And it made sense to me at the time. I was like, yeah, of course. So you double the space. In a way, you almost kind of cut the pheromone in half, or, you know, reduce it in some fashion. And that's probably triggering supersedure, because the queens were fantastic, right? They were our mating nukes. We were pulling those queens out every 3 weeks. They were pretty darn good. You know, but then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make a lot of freaking sense, because if that were the case, if supersedure was triggered from essentially increasing hive space, then that would happen every time you make a split. I mean, you know, you would split, or if you added a super, that would disrupt all that, those pheromones, and would cause supersedure, which may happen, but certainly doesn't happen anywhere near the rate that I was seeing here. So now I'm second guessing myself on that. And, you know, I really have no idea what happened, but I'm like, could that have been a nosema? These hives aren't really growing, even though they've had a vast amount. These hives here have had more syrup than any other yard in the entire apiary, and they look the weakest. They're the lightest. And I know they have low populations, but we're out there making 4 brood, 1 honey splits out there. And we just checked on a yard, I think a couple days ago, and some of them had grown up into like 8, 9, 10 framers in 4 weeks. and you know, with just with a cell. So that doesn't really make sense either. These things should be banging, because this is the first yard to get syrup. When we get that very first syrup truck in summer after honey extraction, that's what I do. I set out a pool and for the syrup, and so they open feed, and they continue to open feed, and they've been open feeding all the time. I mean, it's been a crazy amount. And you know, last year I fed them too thick of syrup. They got honey bound, so I attributed the low population increase to honey binding, which probably to some degree was true. But this year I've been doing a 1-to-1, or now a 1-to-2. They're not honey bound. I haven't opened them yet today, but they weren't, you know, when I checked on them a few weeks ago. So I don't know. And I also know that open feeding is probably the greatest way to spread disease possible, right? Nosema spread usually like mouth to mouth from the worker bees. So they all get up there at that open pool, they all hang out and then swap spit and all that fun stuff. So if there is a little bit of a nosema infection here, you know, it's spreading right up there on that pool heavily. And all the hives, mostly equally, seem to be not growing that much. You can see the ones I've supered, but they weren't amazing. They were just good enough. I thought I wouldn't kill them. And you can see the vast majority are singles. These were technically spring colonies. Why are they not better? Not when they've had literally infinite syrup. There's tons of pollen coming in here. I got a peanut field right down the road, so they were getting peanut pollen. They just pulled the peanuts up, so we're going to be full of mustard around here. These hives should be amazing. So what's going on? I didn't see any mites last time I looked. Not really. So I don't know. You know, it's kind of a puzzle here. I have this problem every single year with these hives. But every single year, you know what I do? Is I open feed. It's the only yard I open feed too. So could be a correlation there. I'm not really sure. So I don't know. I'm gonna, maybe Jeff told me usually after about a week of applying the Fumidil, you'll see them flying. They'll be more active. You should see some growth. He was telling me about another beekeeper in the area who had some problems like that, and it did help. So, but again, my open feeding medication thing is not the best. But until the medication comes in next week, there's not much more I can do about it. It's just a little early test, I guess. I'm just kind of playing around. And Jeff also did tell me that there are other beekeepers in the area who are making honey right now. So probably goldenrod. I'm not really sure. Because you remember last week I was doing cat house, and it was like, I was like, oh, they're making honey. I think they're making honey. And I couldn't figure it out. I asked Jeff, and he said, yeah, a lot of people are making honey right now, which is very strange. Not like enough to harvest, but the hives are growing more than what they're being fed. So, which is weird because we've had so little rain here. I don't know. I can never really figure these girls out. They keep throwing me curveballs every stinking week, but it keeps it interesting. All right, that is a super long rant, but I was just filling you guys in. I'm going to start tearing through these, and I'll see what they look like. So far, the singles kind of like this. Mostly a 4-framer. If I'm being really generous, I might call it just a 5-frame. I am, now that they've all been queen right so far, which they should be. I mean, none of them are recent splits. They were queen right last month. I'm going to start checkerboarding this. These frames here are not foundation. You know, that's fresh comb from the extraction, but I've noticed most of them are just sort of clustering up, which I don't really want them to. It's still plenty warm. They shouldn't be too tight like this. I want to kind of entice them to grow. So I'm going to go ahead and checkerboard this empty comb here and see if I can't sort of spur them to spread across that entire box. I found a few that were still kind of like smashing in this little backside here of the box. You know, that was how I was originally transferring them over to deeps, but like I've been saying now, we've been noticing that just checkerboarding the empty, for usually the foundation, but in this case the fresh comb does tend to entice them to want to draw it out and move it a little bit. So probably have a lot of that to do today, but I think that'll be worth it. The broods is looking really healthy. Saw a couple hives with a little bit of bald brood, but nothing substantial. And they're looking pretty darn nice. A lot of pollen coming in. They are absolutely still full of beetles, though. I was wrong. I thought I'd beat them down. Now, they don't seem to be causing any damage to the hives. You know, the bees are like sort of walling them in back here or something. And when I open them up, of course, the beetles come loose. Yeah, they just don't really seem to be causing any damage, but I still see more beetles here, than any of my other bee yards. It's insane. I'm just going to attribute that to the fact that I have hives here just absolutely year-round. So they just probably never really die off. The beetles always have basically a hive to propagate in. But they're looking pretty darn good. I mean, the singles are varying between a 3 to 5 frame population. course, the ones I've supered are a little bit stronger. Nobody's like blowing my hair back good, you know. They're just like, yeah, okay, they're fine. They're healthy. Tiny bit of wax production, but nothing like what I would think there should be with just the sheer amount of syrup I've dumped onto these girls. But I don't see any outright signs of diseases. The queens appear to be pretty darn good, and I got plenty of protein coming in, so I'm really not just sure why they're just growing so darn slow. But they're healthy, so that's something. This is what I'm doing to the hives here. Kind of just checkerboarding again. It's technically solid comb, but there were about 5 frames of bees here, give or take, at least 5 frames of resources. So I took an empty frame and I put an empty frame here, and an empty frame here, empty frame here, empty frame here. It's still that old freshly extracted comb from earlier this summer. So I've got a resource frame here, here, here. Actually, I think I've got one here as well, and here. Actually, they had 6, so actually there's 6 frames. But yeah, I'm just kind of spacing it. I'm hoping that'll kind of force the bees to spread out a little bit and maybe utilize that. I don't necessarily know if they will, but the weather's still very warm. I don't have to worry about the brood getting chilled. The beetles, while they are present, they do seem to be controlled. I've got basically infinite syrup for the girls, and they have at least 2 types of really abundant pollen coming in. And I personally know there's more pollen coming later this winter when the mustard blooms. So I'm going to go ahead and do it and see if I can't just force them to expand some. This one is okay. I mean, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Like just a, a healthy little cluster, but still a little cluster. I can see we got some fresh wax that's been drawn here since I was last around. So they are getting out there and getting that syrup, I guess, unless there, is some kind of nectar going on out here. But, they've all got tin comb. I mean, they don't look terrible. They're like, that one's not ready for a super, not yet. I think I just need to give them time and more thin feed, and that's really all I can do for them. I can't do a whole lot today, it seems like. These little singles are trying to draw a little bit. I mean, look, that's an old, really bad frame of foundation. A little bit of wax on that side, but that's all brand new. So I'm seeing a little bit here and there. I mean, it's not impressive or anything, but they're working on it. I mean, I guess that's really all I can ask for. The minis are still kicking. I went through them yesterday. I got 10 queens out of them. I had 13 minis around this time last month, and now I have 16 minis. So we actually had some swarms move into them. They were the ones that were sitting out over there. I think a couple of them are drone layers or something I pinched, but drop a cell in them. And so yeah, they're still kicking. I'm not doing anything to them. I'm not feeding them. I'm not medicating them. Nothing. If they're getting a little full, I'll take the internal feeder out and give them a couple empty frames so they can continue to expand. Other than that, they're just kind of, I'm just riding it out to whatever they can give me, which, hey man, if they give me even 10 queens every 3 weeks at this point, I'll just take it. I'm so desperate for queens. Yeah, they've been pretty good. I mean, we definitely took a big loss. I mean, we had 700, so 700 down to 16, but I really haven't hardly put a drop of effort into these things other than just running through them and grabbing their queens out every 3 weeks since this spring. So they're pretty hardy little things. Well, I've run through most of the first row and they're pretty much like what I've shown. I mean, on average, they're roughly around 5 frame populations, which is what they have been since literally this spring, believe it or not. There are some in there that are 3 frames. That's the weakest I saw. There's some that are 4. Everything that's about a 5 frame population, I am checkerboarding that extraction comb in between the frames with honey and brood and stuff. It works for foundation. Checkerboarding has been causing them to draw foundation out, so I don't know why it wouldn't work with comb, but I swear it's almost like they've been trained to be in that little tiny 5 frame nuke box, and they spent they spent up until sometime in the summer when we transferred them over to deeps. And that nuke box, it's like it just hasn't quite dawned on them they can expand. And I really thought I had checkerboarded more last month when I went through them, but most of it's not been done. They're still just stuck in those little 5 frames. So I think maybe I started doing it later in the yard or something. But this whole row, I've had to basically refix. But every one of them's been queen right. None are dead. I mean, they're healthy looking. I cannot get these suckers to get beyond 5 frames, really. I mean, outside of the ones with supers, but you know, they're not much better. And none of the ones I've supered so far that I've checked have done anything. They're, you know, they're all medium boxes of foundation. They're not up there, they're not bothering with it. They don't care. They just got a box foundation sitting on their head. But doesn't seem to be hurting them either, so I'm gonna leave it. If nothing else, it's kind of a marker for me to go, okay, well, those hives are slightly better than 5 frames. And since I'm seeing how weak they are, I think, you know, me thinking I could maybe split or get 50 splits out of these or whatever, like I was thinking last month, I don't think so. I mean, I haven't gone through the double deeps yet, but I really don't see me, you know, doing much. Maybe some of them can be split in half. I highly doubt it. I'm probably fooling myself there. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to have to accept that they are what they are and probably not making any more splits here. You know, support colonies out there, maybe I can do a little bit. Honestly, I checked them also yesterday and I still saw mites in the stinking things. So they're not looking the best either, and they're super honey bound. So what I'm going to do is take these singles and I'm just going to start consolidating. So I'll take this one and I'll just kind of move it over here to this pallet with a hive and a half, and then I'm going to take that pallet away. Same thing with this little single here by itself. I just move them over one spot. They'll do just fine as long as you take the old pallet away. And there's like a little one up there. I'll move that one over to that pallet and just give myself a little more space out here in the bee yard. And I get these pallets picked up. They probably need to be repaired too while we're working on the other pallets. So it is what it is. I think they're going to survive for sure, but me trying to think that I'm going to get splits or they're all going to be supered and all that. I think at this point I'm being a little too optimistic for my own good. So we'll start kind of consolidating them, at least on the pallets for now. It's too early in the season to start combining them. They're fine. We still have plenty of warm weather, plenty of pollen, plenty of growing season. I still have tons of syrup. So right now 2 queens are better than 1. So I'll leave them in their individual boxes. But you know, even if I leave them in there until, you know, we're about to load that semi for almonds, I can just snap them together and send them. I did that just last almond season. You remember I was like cracking mediums off and throwing them on singles and combining singles to double deeps and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like when the semi was parked here, we were so desperate trying to get everything done, and you know what, the farmer was happy with them. So heck, I'll do that again. So I'll keep these little girls running for as long as I can, but may as well get the pallet out. There's a few here that look really good. This one looks really, really nice. I don't know what the population is, but it looks really good from the top. Yeah, look at that. They look pretty darn good. That's at least a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Could be pushing it, but if I checkerboard those outside frames, this one, and I'm just kind of pushing them a little bit, I'll probably go ahead and give them a little medium super as well. Are they going to draw anything? Considering the ones I added a month ago haven't done a stinking thing, I kind of doubt it, but I'm desperate to try and get some of these boxes drawn out, so I'm going to go ahead and push them and put it on. Running across a few that are still just like barely 2, 3 frame populations. They haven't done anything. I can see a little bit of swelling in the wax there. Brood looks healthy. The queen's there. No sign of disease or anything. They're just not expanding much, and you know, they've got a reasonable weight. I can see there's a little bit of new comb production there. So you know, but something like this, to me, this is kind of a sacrificial hive. You know, if I can maintain that queen and she keeps a good 2 frames of brood, and maybe, you know, maybe I get an extra frame or something, I can combine a couple of hives like this. That would give me at least my 6 frame minimum colony. I probably wouldn't stack 2 singles together if they're both this weak, but I might just pull the frames out, merge it into a single, and if we have to, throw an empty super or something on it right before we put it on the truck. I'm going to hope they grow. I mean, it's warm, there's pollen. I put out a second feeder pool, refilled it, so I've got 40 gallons of syrup out right now, and my goal is to keep those pools full, and we'll just see what we can get out of them. Here's a beetle trap. This is what it looks like after a few weeks of being in the hive. I used the Combat roach gel bait poison. Usually use Advion, but I didn't have any, so I just bought some Combat. The other traps were not this full, and the hives are still quite full of beetles. So I'm not sure if the Combat works as well as the Advion. The Advion, usually these traps will be near full to the brim, and there's plenty of beetles to fill them up. So I don't know. I didn't compare the active ingredients or anything. I just bought this because it was at Walmart. But, you know, it did kill some, clearly, so that's always nice. All right, that checkerboarding has actually been working. I'm in kind of the second half of the yard now. This is the side that got checkerboarded probably a month, maybe 2 ago. I think it was last month I did it. But yeah, this was a foundation frame that was spaced in between 2 frames of brood. And they've done it. They have swollen out some here, you see. That comb's been a bit bulged, but it's not so bad that it's destroyed this frame. I'm probably going to kind of respace some of these. It's been tedious. I've just been going through the hives and spacing everything I can. If I've got a comb that's bulged out, I'm kind of pressing it against the outside of the wall to kind of compress that comb. If I've got too much foundation, you know, I'm still spacing it. I don't care really about disrupting the brood nest. I'm just trying to get these hives, hopefully in some kind of way that they will continue to draw all these boxes out. But honestly, now I've gotten in the second half of the yard, they've generally been looking better. Some of the double deeps here are pretty darn full, and they've got 2 or 3 frames of bees, brood, honey up here. They've generally just been looking better. There has been some degree of wax production, you can tell. And look how stained this frame is. See how yellow? All the pollen coming in there. It's not just the comb that's stained. It's actually staining the wood. The pollen's coming in so heavy. That's probably that goldenrod pollen. So that's absolutely fantastic. They're up there just tearing the open feeder apart. So they're really on it right now. It took them a little bit to find it. So I don't know. I'm actually feeling, I mean, these hives aren't amazing, right? I mean, that's not like the biggest massive hive I've ever seen, but they're doing better than I was expecting. I've lost maybe, I don't know, I think I flipped up 3 or 4 singles that were pretty bad, or they were just outright dead. But I had marked them as super weak last month, so it's not really even a shock. The hives that I didn't flag or mark as especially bad are, they're either the same kind of little pipsqueak colonies, or they've expanded enough, and I have been supering a bit. I actually ran out of the medium supers I had over there on the pallet. I'm trying to scrounge around to see if I can find another random medium super anywhere around here. I found a couple here and there scattered about. So I'm still trying to super them. Now, none of them are actually drawing the foundation out, but I have seen a few where the bees are up there, and they filled up this box, and they've got a lot of burr comb on the top bars, kind of gluing the medium down. So maybe they'll still do something. They're definitely in a state of growth right now, so I'm going to keep pumping the feed to them, and I'm going to go ahead and super them, even if it's maybe a tad bit early for some of them, just kind of as a Hail Mary pass to see if we can get these suckers into a 2-story colony before almonds get here. I'm on the next to last pallet here, and I finally found one that's doing some kind of drawing, and I mean, that's not drawn well. Hey, but look at that. There's a little something there. I'll take it. Okay. The hive's looking pretty darn good there. This side is looking so much better than that first side, and I know exactly why. All right, same pallet, different hive. Also have one here that's doing a little bit of drawing. Not much, 2 or 3 little frames just like that. Look at this monster, man. That looks freaking good. That is a big fat single. Heck yeah. That's a California single right there for sure. Oh, that looks really, really good. I can't believe it. Took me the, whatever, I've got 150 hives in or something. But hey, I got 2 drawing a super. I just need the other 148 to do it. This last row is really doing great. This is a super of a double deep. And most of them have had 2 or 3 frames full, but this one looks really nice. They've really swollen a lot of those frames out. They've really moved up here. Even down in the bottom box, they were a mostly full box. Not 100% full, but looking really good. So yeah, that's this last row is looking really nice. So we do have some moving into the doubles, which are great. And none of them have been slam empty, but this is the best looking one that I've seen. But that's a really nice looking double deep to me. Finished running through the hives here. Overall looking pretty darn good, better than I thought. Especially just a few random ones here and there were just really, really good. And you see this is the first row here. How it usually goes is like this row here. I do this row, and I do kind of like that first half somewhere in there. Wife usually takes care of that half of the yard. And when I said earlier, I kind of knew why that half was better. It's because she was, that was her half of the yard. And it's better because she was checkerboarding those, those empty comb frames from extraction a long time ago. She was doing that actually when we transferred them over to deeps, back, whatever that was, back in August or something. So I can really see the difference. The bees have definitely grown. They didn't fix up and move into all the frames, but they are much better than my side here, where I was getting so irritated about them looking like they were still stuck in a 5-frame nuke box. It's because I just dropped that 2 empty combs over there and then 3 over there, and they just got stuck. Where she checkerboarded those frames months ago, and it's actually forced the bees to expand. So she had a much better technique, which, you know, her doing that is what allowed me to even realize that checkerboarding worked in the first place, because I've always been skeptical of that technique. I've heard people talk about it, but I was like, you know, whatever. Yeah, Bigfoot's real too, you know. But, you know, I really got slapped in the face and put in my place because of this yard. It's just been night and day, man, difference. I have some of these down here in the 5-frame box. These were some swarms we caught, you know, just around the property for, you know, who knows. They've just been sitting out in the front yard, side yard, whatever. I moved them down here last night, and I didn't transfer them over yet. I'm just going to give them a few days to settle in. They were a little stressed out. A lot of the population is still trying to drift back over there in the woods. This pallet here, it looks a little rough, but this was actually a 4.5 story colony. And what this was, you know, when we extract honey, like in the summer, you know, you always yank a queen or you yank a box of brood or whatever. I don't extract that stuff. I just throw it in an empty box and I just stack it behind the extraction room. And it ended up being, you know, 4 deeps and a medium worth of brood and bees and queens or who knows what. And it's been sitting there since we extracted in, you know, July or whatever. So I broke all those down. I didn't dig in them or anything. I just broke them into a pallet and just brought them down here. I'm going to give them also a few days to settle in. There's a queen in there somewhere, and I'll equalize. They were slammed from the bottom all the way up to the top. They were packed full of bees, so I'll get definitely 4 good splits out of those. And I did consolidate a lot. I freed up a lot of space. You can see where the pallets were. Freed up a lot of space. You know, I moved the colonies. If there was an empty spot, kind of, I moved them over. If it's a 2 thing, I don't do it. I only move them if I know I can eliminate that pallet. So that's kind of nice. Gave me a little more space over here. Kind of make me not have to walk quite so much. And there's the pallets I freed up. I think I freed up about a dozen, maybe 15, something like that. Supered several more hives just with the mediums. I really am out of mediums now. I thought I was a few weeks ago, I think, but I went through everywhere I could. I went through everything. Was digging through the trash and I was like, man, come on, give me, I got plenty of empty medium shelves. I just didn't have any frames left. So I scrounged up a frame here and a frame over there. And I think a couple of the supers are missing a frame. I did a 9-frame box, but I supered everything I can. There's still some over there on that side that could actually use a super. They're not quite ready for like a deep, you know, I'm going to give them a little more time with that open feed. And, maybe I'll super them with a deep. This time of year, sometimes I'll just under super. I'll put the foundation on the bottom, put the bees on top, and you know, we can always rotate them around again in California right before we send them over there, so they'll be able to grow upwards during the spring flow. That's a little trick you can do. But I don't know. They're still a little early, but you saw they're on that open feeders now, so they're working pretty hard. Still got quite a few singles. All in all, I've got about 140 hives on this side here. So we lost in the end, I don't know, I probably lost like 4 or 5, I think, in the end. So they're pretty much falling away. Everything here looks pretty darn stable. There was like one little single out there that's kind of iffy. I need to give it brood, but I didn't equalize anything because most of these hives didn't really have enough to give until I got, you know, to those last few pallets over here. Maybe they could give something, but I got to think about that. I did run into a few queenless colonies here and there. All I did was just give them a frame of eggs from, usually from these double deeps because they were the best. I just gave them a flag here. I don't have any cells or queens at the moment, so, you know, I'm just going to drop some eggs and, you know, roll the dice and hope for the best. But overall, they're looking definitely better than I expected. And yeah, this side here was just by far the best. I still need to go through all the colonies out there, the cell builders and the sport hives. I made a bunch of splits, you know, there several weeks ago. I need to check on those, but should be over 60 hives out there. So we should still be sitting on around 200 plus out here on the farm, which is fine. And yeah, there's really not much else I can do. Believe it or not, I was hoping to go through all of these in a day and then spend another day out there because honestly, I think those hives are the worst, believe it or not, out of all the farm hives. But it took me about more or less 2 days to get through all of these colonies, just because I did go ahead and take the time and space all the frames out properly this time. And I queen checked everything, checked for mites, whatever. You know, basically gave them the full course treatment, because next month in November, I have to start grading, and I don't want to be trapped in a little yard like this. That's not, you know, that's not a guaranteed thing. I'd rather invest my time in the colonies that I feel like I can make more money with when it comes to almonds. But I would probably guess that everything you see here that's a 2-story hive, I feel pretty darn comfortable they'll make it. Yeah, they're going to still have some foundation, but a little foundation is just going to be okay. It can work. But you can see they're drawing a little bit. If they can just draw enough so they'll be in that second box and glue it down so it doesn't break in half on the truck, and I still got a good 10 frame box of bees on the bottom, you know what, I can live with that. That's fine. The singles, I don't know. Some singles I think will be able to make it if I can find a super for them. Some singles are just going to have to merge together. So when I start kind of grading and making my notes next month for almonds, trying to figure out how many hives I can send, I'm just going to, I always like to grade conservative in November. I'm just going to say all these 2 singles are going to be combined into one. That's a double deep there in my way. So we'll lose a bunch. I think there were about 75 singles here. So, you know, that's what is that, 30 something, 35, 30 something hives, I don't know. So not great, but I don't know. I mean, they look better than I thought. So the other thing I have to figure out is the syrup issue. I did kind of get a rough idea again on the syrup. You know, I'm keeping track of that. Most of those totes up there, and there's about 20 or so totes, still have ballpark 20 gallons-ish in the bottom. So I can use that, I can drain those 20 gallons if it's not fermented. I hope it's not, into those pools. So that's, let's see, a 20, that's about 400 gallons. So 200 hives, that's about 2 gallons or so per colony as an open feeder that I can give to these. And that's it, you know. So, I mean, honestly, like those singles out there at 2 gallons, it might make them be enough for them to survive the winter food-wise, but it's not going to get them to draw out a deep box of foundation, you know. So that's kind of a concern. But that's if I don't drain any of the main totes. That's just me draining out the bottom parts, which I have to do anyways because the pump won't pull it, and otherwise it's going to ferment. And there's not really enough honey here to equalize and to give the hives any significant amount of weight. The Fumidil is supposed to come in tomorrow, and I'll have just enough syrup as a 1-to-2 ratio now. So 1 part sugar, 2 parts water, real thin, that I can get add all the Fumidil, and I can feed all the colonies about another 2 gallons. There's a few yards I might be able to skip because they're so honey bound, like that cat house yard. There's more than enough honey there to equalize. It'd be a lot of work, but it would stop me from having to buy, you know, thousands of dollars worth of corn syrup too. So that's just something I have to weigh and figure out. So technically I have enough syrup as of this second to give all the hives, including all of these hives, 2 gallons of a 1-to-2. That would also allow me to treat all the hives with a full dose of the Fumidil B. You know, open feeder here, bucket feeders in the outside colonies. And then that's it. I'm slam out of syrup. I don't think it's going to be enough, but I'm just not sure either. Some of the hives are gaining weight pretty rapidly with this goldenrod or whatever's putting the nectar out. I've been just consistently surprised when I'm coming across yards that they've gained weight way more than they should have with the amount of calories I've been feeding them with the corn syrup. So I'm kind of holding out hope the you know, Mother Nature is going to help me out here. But if she doesn't, we may or may not have to get syrup. But my plan next week is just to run around and feed. That's all I want to do. I mean, you know, pop it, check the flags, the splits, or whatever real quick, but don't go digging around in the hives. Just get that syrup on all the colonies with the Fumidil. I want that thin syrup combined with all of the pollen that's coming in. That'll give me the best chance for population growth, the best chance for comb production. I have also noticed that some of the goldenrod on the side of the roads is beginning to die. Not the bulk of it, just the very, very, very early blooms. There's still plenty of pollen coming in, plenty of goldenrod still out there. But I want to make sure, you know, if it takes maybe a couple of weeks to take that 2 gallons of syrup, plus a week for me to feed everything, that's 3 weeks. And basically for all that syrup to be taken. And that's going to put us kind of into November, you know, end of October, and we're supposed to close on the house last week of October. So I have to go up to Tennessee to do that, assuming nothing else goes wrong. So I want to start grading the hives first week in November, just my very early preliminary grade. It's, you know, it's not exact or anything, but, you know, I want to make sure that the hives have all the syrup and they have the medication, and I've done everything that I can to make them look as good as possible. So hopefully I get the best count when it comes to my grade. And really that grade is what's going to tell me if I need to order more syrup, if we have a chance for the third semi or whatever. It's going to take me the whole month of November. Usually it takes me the whole month, and we have several hundred colonies less than what we have now. So it may take me longer. It could take me into December. I just don't know. It'll depend on the weather too. So, but if I'm not feeding and I'm just kind of cracking hives open, checking populations, and the weather's good to me, and I don't run into any major roadblocks, it should be possible. So there's a lot. Things are still a little slow right now, but they're about to kick off here in the next couple of weeks. And once we have that initial grade, then you're just going around trying to equalize and affix and feed again and medicate again, or whatever I got to do. It's going to be a panic to try and finish off that third semi-load of hives. So I'm trying to enjoy my little bit of a shorter, easier day here, because they're about to come to an end, and I'm going to be in California stress level. So. But anyways, the Fumidil won't be here till tomorrow, probably afternoon. It's FedEx, so God, they're slow as dirt. I hate FedEx, UPS all the way, man. So I should have maybe time to run through those 60 colonies or so by the time the Fumidil comes in, and then I'll start feeding on Tuesday if all goes well, and then I will just haul butt, pump that feed medication out ASAP, and then it's off to the races, man. So yeah, let's hope they're doing good. All right, guys, a lot of rambling in this video here, but always is, it seems like, when I work the farm hives. But all right, guys, well, thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week. Bye.